First Contact Academy. The Galactic Federation Military Academy orbited the gas giant Viridian Prime like an elaborate jewel, its crystalline spires catching the light of 3 distant suns. For over 15,000 cycles, the Academy had produced the finest officers in known space. Tacticians, strategists, and diplomats who maintained peace across 27 sentient species and 4,000 habitable worlds. Commander Excel Prax stood at the viewport of the senior faculty lounge, his scaled fingers drumming against the transparent alloy. Behind him, the rest of the Academy's leadership argued in hushed tones. "It is an unconscionable risk," hissed Director Thorne, her tentacles coiling with anxiety. "Humans have barely achieved rudimentary interstellar travel. Their inclusion in the Federation was controversial enough, but bringing them to the Academy as instructors. The Council's decision is final," Admiral Vaz replied, his crystalline exoskeleton glinting as he shifted in his chair. "The diplomatic corps believes integration is the most prudent course of action." Excel Prax turned from the viewport. "You've all seen the briefings on Earth. Their technological progress is concerning. From first flight to nuclear weapons in less than half a century. From nuclear weapons to quantum computing in less than another. They're advancing too rapidly to be left isolated. Better to bring them into the fold than have them develop independently," agreed Admiral Voss. "But as combat instructors," Director Thorne's skin flushed a bright violet. "Teaching our cadets, the psychological implications alone are precisely why they're valuable," interrupted Excel Praxis. "The humans have perspectives our people lack." The room fell silent as the door slid open to admit a tall, slender Athosian. Chief Psychologist Lear's feathered crest lay flat against her skull, a sign of extreme distress among her kind. "The human representatives have docked," she announced. "They request permission to address the senior faculty." "So soon?" Director Thorne's tentacles writhed. "We haven't prepared the cadets for direct interaction." "Better they see us as we are," said Excel Praxtex, "than waste time with elaborate performances." He gestured to Lear. "Bring them in." The beings that entered the faculty lounge were disappointingly ordinary at first glance. Bilateral symmetry, bipedal locomotion, endoskeletal support structure, common enough traits in the galaxy. What made humans distinctive wasn't visible on the surface. There were 3 of them, 2 males and 1 female, according to the briefing materials. They wore simple dark uniforms with minimal insignia, strange for a species that, according to intelligence reports, typically adorned their military personnel with elaborate medals and ribbons. "Thank you for receiving us," said the tallest human, a dark-skinned male with close-cropped hair. "I am Captain Marcus Chen, Earth Defense Force. These are Commanders Sarah Hassan and Thomas Novak." The formal introductions proceeded with the typical diplomatic niceties. It wasn't until they reached the matter at hand that tension returned to the room. "We understand," said Captain Chen, "that our inclusion in the Academy's programming has met with some resistance." "Not resistance," Director Thorne replied diplomatically. "Merely concern for proper integration protocols." "With respect," said Commander Hassan, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed to ease the tension in the room, "we believe the most effective integration begins with honesty. Earth is new to the galactic community. We have much to learn from you, but perhaps there are things we can teach as well." "What could Earth possibly teach the Academy?" asked one of the junior faculty members, a Centaurian whose name Excel Praxis couldn't recall. "Your technological development remains centuries behind the Federation standard." Commander Novak smiled, a gesture that somehow seemed both friendly and predatory simultaneously. "Technology isn't everything. Sometimes the simplest solutions require the most complex thinking. We propose," continued Captain Chen, "a special curriculum component, a historical overview of Earth's military development, tactics, and psychology. Not to glorify our violent past, but to provide context for who we are and what we can contribute to Federation security." Admiral Voss leaned forward. "You wish to share your warfare techniques with our cadets. We wish to share our understanding of conflict, corrected Commander Hassan. Its costs, its consequences, and sometimes its necessity. Director Thorne's tentacles coiled tighter. Our cadets are trained primarily for peacekeeping, diplomacy, and defensive operations. The Federation hasn't engaged in large-scale warfare for over 2,000 cycles. Perhaps that's precisely why they should learn from us, said Commander Novak. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. An Earth philosopher said that. Exel Prax had remained silent throughout the exchange, studying the humans carefully. Now he spoke. I believe the proposal has merit. A controlled educational setting is the ideal place for cultural exchange of this nature. Then it's settled, said Captain Chen. When do we begin? The Advanced Tactical Theory lecture hall was filled to capacity. Cadets from 17 species sat in tiered seating, their varied biologies creating a living mosaic of the Federation's diversity. At the front of the hall, Professor Zix adjusted her anti-gravity supports, the elderly Arcturian's gossamer wings fluttering with nervous energy. Today's session represents a significant departure from our standard curriculum, she announced. As you are all aware, Earth joined the Federation 6 standard months ago. As part of our ongoing cultural exchange, we welcome representatives from Earth's defense forces who will provide historical context on human military development. A ripple of conversation swept through the hall. In the front row, Cadet Vrill's antennae twitched with amusement. The Rigelian leaned toward his classmate, a methane-breathing Tolari named Kaez. Have you seen the physical assessment metrics for humans? Vril whispered, barely capable of lifting twice their body weight. No natural armor. Terrible visual acuity. What could they possibly teach us about warfare? Kez's breathing apparatus hissed softly as she processed the ambient methane. Intelligence reports suggest their historical development was unusually violent for ascension species. Perhaps there's something to be learned from that. Violence isn't the same as effective strategy, Vril countered. My hatchmates and I engaged in dominance displays that would terrify most humans, but that doesn't qualify me to instruct Federation officers. Their conversation was cut short as Captain Chen stepped onto the podium. Up close, the human appeared even more unremarkable. No bioluminescence, no enhanced appendages, no visible adaptations for extreme environments. Just the standard bipedal primate configuration common to dozens of species. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today, Chen began. Earth is honored to join the Federation and contribute to its noble mission of peace and cooperation across the galaxy. Vril's antennae twitched skeptically. However, Chen continued, peace is not merely the absence of conflict. True peace requires understanding the nature of conflict, its causes, its costs, and sometimes its necessity. Behind him, a holographic display activated, showing a slowly rotating image of Earth, a blue-green world with white cloud formations. For most of our history, humans fought one another. Tribe against tribe, nation against nation, ideology against ideology. We developed technology specifically to harm each other. We study the art of war as diligently as you study the art of peace. The hologram shifted to show primitive humans wielding crude stone tools, then metal weapons, then projectile firearms, then mechanized warfare, each image more destructive than the last. What you're about to see may disturb you, Chen warned. It disturbs us too. But understanding our past is essential to appreciating who we are now and what we can contribute to the Federation's future. The display changed again, now showing footage from what the caption identified as World War I, Western Front, 1916. The images were grainy, monochromatic, but unmistakably depicting organized mass violence on a scale that made several cadets audibly gasp. Rows of humans in primitive environmental protection gear climbed from trenches carved into muddy terrain, only to be cut down by automatic weapons fire. Bodies piled in contorted heaps, while others stepped over them. Continuing the advance despite catastrophic losses. Chemical weapons deployment, IPRES, 1915, read the next caption, showing soldiers clawing at their faces as yellowish clouds enveloped them. Vril's antennae lay flat against his head. They used chemical weapons against their own species. He whispered to Kez, genuine horror in his voice. The footage continued, showing increasingly sophisticated weapons. Aircraft dropping explosives on civilian structures, armored ground vehicles crushing defenders beneath metal treads, naval vessels launching projectiles capable of destroying targets beyond visual range. Then came World War I, 1939 to 1945. The scale of destruction expanded exponentially. Entire cities reduced to rubble. Systematic extermination of population groups. And finally, the mushroom clouds over 2 Japanese cities, the first deployment of atomic weapons against civilian populations. By this point, the lecture hall had fallen completely silent. Several cadets appeared physically ill. A Delphian in the 3rd row had entered a defensive hibernation state, their translucent skin clouded with stress hormones. Captain Chen allowed the silence to linger before speaking again. This is our history. We neither glorify nor excuse it. We acknowledge it, learn from it, and strive to ensure it never repeats, here on Earth or anywhere in the Federation. Commander Hassan stepped forward. What you've seen represents only the first half of the 20th century on our world. Tomorrow, we will examine more recent conflicts, guerrilla warfare, terrorism, and psychological operations, before concluding with how humanity finally achieved global peace. Professor Six moved to the podium, her wings now perfectly still, a sign of extreme distress in Arcturians. That will be all for today. Cadets are reminded that psychological support services are available through the Academy's Wellness Center. As the cadets filed out in stunned silence, Vril found himself unable to make his usual sarcastic comments. Beside him, Kez's breathing apparatus worked overtime to process her accelerated respiration. "I'll see you tomorrow," Kez asked uncertainly. Vril's antennae remained flat against his skull. "I'm not sure I want to see more." At the back of the lecture hall, Commander Izel Prax observed the cadets' reactions with grim satisfaction. Everything was proceeding exactly as the council had predicted. Later that evening, in the secure conference room adjacent to Admiral Vaugh's office, the Academy leadership reconvened with the human representatives. 17 cadets have already requested formal withdrawal from the tactical curriculum, reported Chief Psychologist Lear. Another 34 have sought psychological counseling. This is unprecedented. Is this the reaction you anticipated? Admiral Voles asked, addressing the humans directly. Captain Chen nodded solemnly. More or less, the history of warfare is disturbing, especially to species whose evolutionary paths didn't include the same level of intraspecies competition as ours. It seems unnecessarily traumatic. Director Thorne objected. These cadets are being prepared for peacekeeping missions, not whatever it is you showed them today. With respect, said Commander Hassan, peacekeepers who have never confronted the reality of violence are dangerously unprepared. The Federation has enjoyed peace for so long that many of your people have forgotten what true conflict looks like. And you believe this justifies psychologically scaring our cadets. Thorne's tentacles writhed with indignation. Commander Novik leaned forward. Better they be scared in a classroom than destroyed in the field because they couldn't comprehend what they were facing. The room fell silent at his words. Commander Ixel Prax cleared his throat. I believe what our colleagues are trying to explain is that peace through strength requires understanding strength in all its forms. Precisely, agreed Captain Chen. Tomorrow's session will be more challenging in some ways. We'll cover psychological warfare, insurgency tactics, and terrorism, concepts many of your cadets may find even more disturbing than conventional warfare. And you believe this is necessary? Admiral Voles asked, his crystalline features refracting the room's light. Absolutely necessary, Chen replied without hesitation. Because what we haven't told your cadets yet, what the Council has authorized us to reveal only to those who remain after all 3 sessions, is the real reason Earth was invited to join the Federation now, after being monitored for over a century. Director Thorne's color paled. "You mean?" "Yes," said Excel Prax grimly. "The Void Directive has been activated. The Federation needs soldiers who understand war, not just peacekeepers. And humanity, for all its flaws, understands war better than any species we encountered." Admiral Vo's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly. "May the cosmic harmony preserve us all if we're wrong about them. And if we're right about what's coming," added Captain Chen softly, "may your gods help us all." The terrible truth. The second day of the human military history presentation began with a noticeably sparser audience. Of the original 143 cadets, only 94 had returned. The empty seats formed conspicuous gaps in the lecture hall's precise seating arrangement, like missing teeth in an otherwise perfect smile. Professor Zix's wings fluttered nervously as she surveyed the diminished class. "Before we begin today's session, I must remind you all that attendance is completely voluntary. Anyone who finds the material too disturbing may leave at any time without academic penalty." In the third row, Cadet Kez noticed that her friend Frill had chosen a seat farther back than his usual front row position. His antennae remained partially flattened, the Rigelian equivalent of a perpetual wince. Around them, other cadets displayed similar signs of stress. Meridians with dulled bioluminescence, Arcturians with trembling wing membranes, and several Quantics whose normal crystalline luster had clouded with anxiety proteins. Commander Hassan took the podium today. Unlike Captain Chen's formal military bearing, the female human projected a calm, almost scholarly demeanor. "Yesterday," she began, "we examined conventional warfare, organized violence between nation-states using military forces. Today we explore how warfare evolved beyond traditional battlefields to encompass psychological operations, insurgency tactics, and terrorism." The holographic display activated, showing images of what appeared to be primitive human dwellings in arid terrain. The caption identified the location as Afghanistan, 21st century. Traditional warfare assumes clear distinctions, uniformed combatants, defined objectives, recognized rules of engagement, Commander Hassan explained. Asymmetric warfare deliberately blurs these lines. The display showed human soldiers patrolling through settlements while civilian residents watched warily. Then came footage of hidden explosive devices detonating beneath military vehicles. Civilian casualties, children being used to transport weapons, hospital buildings being used as defensive positions. When facing a technologically superior force, insurgents adapt by exploiting ethical constraints, Hassan continued. They understand that civilized societies impose rules on their military forces, rules insurgents themselves don't follow. Keza's methane processor hissed as her respiration accelerated. They use their own young as weapons, she whispered, the translator struggling to convey her horror. "In some conflicts, yes," confirmed Commander Hassan, whose enhanced hearing had picked up the comment. "Children were recruited, indoctrinated, and deployed specifically because opposing forces would hesitate to fire upon them." A Meridian cadet near the front abruptly stood, his skin flashing distress patterns, and hurried from the room. 3 others followed immediately after. The presentation continued relentlessly. Footage showed increasingly disturbing tactics: suicide bombers in civilian gathering places, hostage executions, systematic targeting of cultural heritage sites. Each segment was accompanied by clinical analysis of the psychological impact such tactics were designed to create. "Fear," explained Commander Hassan, "can be a more effective weapon than explosives. A single attack killing 20 civilians might seem strategically insignificant, but if it creates fear in 20 million, it achieves its objective." The hologram shifted to show clinical interrogation settings. Human subjects undergoing sleep deprivation, stress positions, sensory manipulation. Psychological warfare targets the mind rather than the body, Hassan continued. Breaking enemy will through fear, confusion, and despair rather than physical force. Another 6 cadets stood and left without comment. In the back row, Vril leaned toward a Centaurian classmate. Why are they showing us this? What possible practical application could this have for Federation peacekeepers? Commander Novak, who had been standing quietly at the side of the room, stepped forward. An excellent question, Cadet. Would you care to repeat it for everyone? Vril's antennae flattened completely in embarrassment, but he stood. I asked what practical application this material has for our training. The Federation hasn't engaged in armed conflict for over 2,000 cycles. We maintain peace through diplomacy and cultural exchange. Not this. He gestured at the horrific images still frozen on the display. A fair question, Novak acknowledged. Tell me, Cadet, in your emergency response training, do you prepare only for likely scenarios, or for all possible scenarios? All possible scenarios within reason, Vril replied. Exactly, said Novak. Now consider this. The Federation's 2,000 cycles of peace exists within a galaxy that's over 13 billion years old. Is it reasonable to assume this peace will continue indefinitely without challenge? The room fell silent as cadets contemplated this perspective. We don't share Earth's military history to glorify it, Commander Hassan added. We share it as a case study in what can happen when diplomacy fails, and as a reminder that not all species or civilizations share the Federation's commitment to peaceful coexistence. The presentation resumed with footage labeled Information Warfare, 21st Century. It showed sophisticated misinformation campaigns, digital infrastructure attacks, and systematic manipulation of population groups through targeted propaganda. As technology evolved, so did warfare, Hassan explained. Physical control of territory became less important than control of information and perception. By the time the session concluded, fewer than 60 cadets remained in the hall. Those who stayed wore expressions ranging from horrified fascination to grim determination. Professor Zix approached the podium, her wings now completely still, a sign that her distress had transcended into a deeper state of resignation. Tomorrow's final session will cover Earth's transition to global peace and their perspective on interstellar security. Again, attendance is voluntary. As the cadets filed out, Commander Novak approached Vril. You asked a good question today, Cadet. I'd like to continue that conversation, if you're willing. Vril hesitated, then nodded. I'm willing, Commander. Admiral Vaux's private chamber resembled a geode. Crystalline formations projected from every surface, creating a space that felt simultaneously open and enclosed. For a silicon-based life form like the Admiral, it provided the optimal resonance frequency for clear thinking. Director Thorne paced nervously, her tentacles leaving microscopic suction marks on the polished floor. 43%. We've lost 43% of the tactical track cadets in just 2 days. The Academy Board is demanding explanations. They're getting exactly what they asked for, Xelprax replied, his scaled fingers steepled before him. A screening mechanism that identifies which cadets might be suitable for what's coming. Chief Psychologist Lear studied the holographic readouts floating above the central table. The pattern of withdrawals is telling. Species with evolutionary histories involving territorial competition show significantly lower resignation rates than those evolved from collective or symbiotic models. And the humans? Asked Admiral Vaux, his crystalline form vibrating slightly with concern. Have they shown any concerning behaviors? They've been exactly as advertised. Telprax said. Clinical, professional, honest about their history without glorifying it. That's what worries me, Thorne interjected. How can they speak so calmly about such horrors? What kind of psychological compartmentalization allows them to acknowledge this violent history while functioning as apparently rational beings? Lear's feathered crest rose slightly, indicating deep consideration. Their evolutionary pathway is unique among Federation species. Most sentient species developed intelligence as a means of cooperative problem-solving or environmental manipulation. Humans developed intelligence partially as a competitive advantage against members of their own species, predators who became self-aware, murmured Admiral Voss. Not exactly, Lyra corrected. More like tribal omnivores whose greatest threats were other tribes of their own kind. It created a peculiar psychological duality: extreme cooperation within their group, potential extreme violence toward outsiders. The chamber door slid open to admit Captain Chen. The human showed no reaction to the tension evident in the room. The second session concluded as expected, he reported. Current withdrawal rate is 43%, with another 17% showing significant distress indicators. And this satisfies your criteria? Director Thorne asked, unable to keep the edge from her voice. It's consistent with our predictions, Chen replied evenly. Tomorrow's session will likely trigger another 15 to 20% withdrawal, leaving us with barely a third of our tactical cadets, Thorne noted bitterly. Leaving you with the third who can handle the reality of what's coming, Chen countered. Quality over quantity, Director. Admiral Vo's crystalline structure vibrated at a frequency that translated as deep concern. The Council remains divided on whether the Void Directive was activated prematurely. Some believe we should have waited until confirmation rather than preparation. With respect, Admiral, said Chen, if you wait for confirmation, you've already lost. Earth learned that lesson repeatedly throughout our history. Zell Prax cleared his throat. Have you selected candidates for the special briefing? Chen nodded. 7 cadets have demonstrated particularly promising responses. 4 have actively sought additional information rather than avoiding it. 3 have begun asking the right questions, including the Rigelian Vril, added Commander Novak, entering the chamber behind Chen. He's skeptical but engaged. Challenges assumptions but remains open to evidence. Precisely the profile we need. Are you certain about this accelerated timeline? Asked Admiral Voss. The original integration plan allowed for 3 years of cultural exchange before implementation of joint operations. We don't have 3 years, Chen said flatly. Based on your own long-range scout reports, we estimate 18 months at most before first contact, possibly less if their technology is more advanced than we believe. The room fell silent at this assessment. Then we proceed as planned. Admiral Voss finally concluded. Tomorrow, after the final presentation, the selected cadets will receive the classified briefing. And may whatever gods you believe in help us all if we're wrong, added Chen softly. The restricted access laboratory deep beneath the Academy's public levels hummed with energy as Commander Novak led Cadet Vril through layers of security checkpoints. Each doorway scanned them at the molecular level before permitting passage. I didn't know this facility existed, Vril admitted, his antennae twitching with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. Few do, replied Novak. It was established after the Council activated the Void Directive. I'm not familiar with that protocol. You wouldn't be. It's classified beyond even most senior Academy staff clearance. They reached a final doorway where Captain Chen and Commander Hassan waited alongside 3 other cadets. Kez, a crystalline quantic named Zeph, and a bioluminescent meridian called Telix. What is this? Vril asked, suddenly wary. Why bring us here? Because you asked the right questions, replied Chen, and because you didn't walk out. The door slid open to reveal a circular chamber dominated by a holographic projection of deep space, specifically the void between the Cygnus and Perseus arms of the galaxy. Within that void, something moved, something that defied standard classification. 3 years ago, Chen explained as they entered, a Federation long-range scout ship detected anomalous energy signatures in the intergalactic void. Further investigation revealed these. The hologram zoomed in to show structures, if they could be called that, moving through space. They resembled nothing in Federation taxonomic databases, part organic, part mechanical, utterly alien in configuration. We call them void entities, said Hassan. They appear to be a collective consciousness using both biological and technological components. They do not respond to standard communication protocols and have consumed 3 unmanned research probes sent to establish contact. Consumed, echoed Kez, her methane processor whirring anxiously. Deconstructed and absorbed, clarified Chen, including all data contained in the probe's memory systems. Vril's analytical mind raced ahead. So they now possess information about the Federation. Exactly, confirmed Novak, including star charts, species databases, and basic cultural information, but not military capabilities, added Hassan. The probes were scientific, not military. The implications hung heavily in the air. The Federation has no standing army, Vril said slowly, the pieces falling into place. No warships, no weapons development programs. We've maintained peace so long we've forgotten how to fight. Yes, said Chen simply. That's why Earth was fast-tracked for Federation membership. Not for our technology or our resources, but for your understanding of warfare, concluded Zeph, the Quantic's crystalline structure vibrating with realization. The Council believes these entities will reach Federation space within 18 months, explained Hassan. We don't know their intentions. We hope for peaceful contact. But hope is not a strategy. And the presentations? Asked Helix, the meridian skin flashing patterns of understanding. They were a test. A screening tool, confirmed Novak, to identify cadets capable of confronting uncomfortable realities. Those who stayed through all 3 sessions will be offered positions in a new Joint Defense Initiative. Vril's antennae straightened fully, a sign of complete attention among his species. You're creating a military force. We're creating a defense capability, corrected Chen, drawing on Earth's historical experience while incorporating Federation values and technology. A specialized branch specifically prepared for the possibility that these void entities might not share our commitment to peaceful coexistence. And you want us to be part of this? Asked Kez. We need you, said Hassan with unexpected vulnerability. Earth knows war, yes, but we don't know the galaxy. We don't understand the full range of capabilities your various species possess. This must be a true collaboration. The cadets exchanged glances, each processing this revelation according to their species' cognitive patterns. I have one question, said Vril finally. After showing us the horrors humans have inflicted on each other throughout your history, why should we trust you as allies? Captain Chen didn't hesitate. Because we've learned from our mistakes. Because we recognize the precious rarity of the peace the Federation has built. And because if there's fighting to be done, we'd rather humans do it alongside you than have your people face it alone and unprepared. Silence fell as the holographic void entities continued their inexorable movement through the darkness of intergalactic space, steadily approaching the boundaries of known civilization. Tomorrow's final presentation will cover Earth's journey to global peace, said Commander Hassan softly. After witnessing war's ultimate horror, nuclear devastation, humanity finally understood what we stood to lose. We built international institutions, cultural exchanges, shared scientific endeavors. We're not perfect, but we're committed to never repeating our darkest chapters. And yet here you are, observed Telix, preparing for war again. No, corrected Commander Novak. Preparing for the defense of peace. There's a difference. Vril studied the humans carefully, his species' heightened perception of micro-expressions allowing him to detect subtleties others might miss. What he saw wasn't bloodlust or aggression, but rather a grim determination born of terrible experience. I'll stay for tomorrow's presentation, he decided, and I want to hear more about this joint initiative. One by one, the other cadets voiced similar commitments. As they filed out of the secret chamber, Admiral Vos watched from an observation room above, his crystalline form vibrating with complex emotions. It begins, he said to Excel Prax, who stood beside him. May the cosmic harmony guide us. If the harmony fails, replied Excel Prax grimly, we now have humanity as a backup plan. The coming storm. The lecture hall was eerily quiet as the remaining cadets filed in for the final presentation. Only 53 of the original 143 remained, barely more than a third. They sat closer together now, empty seats forming a stark reminder of those who had withdrawn. Professor Zix was notably absent. In her place, Admiral Vos himself stood at the podium, his crystalline form refracting the room's light in complex patterns that reflected his equally complex thoughts. "Before we begin today's session," he announced, "I want to commend each of you for your perseverance. The material presented over the past 2 days has been deliberately challenging, a test of your capacity to confront difficult realities." Murmurs rippled through the audience as cadets exchanged glances. In the fourth row, Vril's antennae twitched with confirmation. He caught Kez's eye across the aisle, and the Tolari gave a slight nod. Their suspicions had been correct. Today's final presentation, continued Admiral Vos, will address humanity's transition from conflict to cooperation, culminating in their recent admission to the Federation. Following this, selected cadets will be invited to participate in a specialized program I am now authorized to reveal. He stepped aside as Commander Hassan took the podium. The human looked more relaxed today, as if unburdened by no longer needing to share her species' darkest moments. "Yesterday we examined the evolution of warfare through the 20th and early 21st centuries," she began. "Today we explore how humanity finally achieved what we'd sought for millennia: lasting global peace." The holographic display activated, showing Earth as seen from orbit, a blue-green jewel wrapped in wispy clouds and city lights. The turning point came in 2031, when a limited nuclear exchange between regional powers demonstrated that even tactical nuclear weapons created unacceptable humanitarian consequences. The display showed devastating images of 2 cities reduced to radioactive ruins, followed by the global environmental impacts that followed. "The end,"